What is your biggest secret you keep from everyone? Story 1. When I was 17, my best friend, who was 16 and a year behind me in school, tragically passed away. We had met years earlier in a split CLA of 4th and 5th graders. One weekend, just a few weeks into the new school year, we went biking together. During the ride, he went over the edge of a pathway and fell 25 feet onto a rocky ridge before plunging another 50 feet into a river. He landed headfirst. It was ruled an accident. His bike had apparently slipped, causing him to lose control and go over the edge. I was riding ahead of him and didn't notice anything until I heard the crash behind me. He didn't make a sound as he went over. When I turned around, the sight was something I'll never forget. I still have nightmares about it. I had my phone with me and immediately called 911, but there was nothing anyone could do. Even from where I stood, I could see his helmet was cracked and blood was pooling around his head. His family blamed me for his death, even though it was an accident. They claimed I had pushed him too hard to ride or that I had distracted him. They needed someone to blame. About 9 months later, at the end of the school year, I had to clear out our shared locker. Even though I was in grade 12 and he was in grade 11, we had agreed to share a locker. As I cleaned it out, I found an envelope taped to the bottom of a shelf, addressed to me. I took it home, but couldn't bring myself to open it for over a month. 2 days after my 18th birthday, I finally did. It was a suic note he had written the Friday before the accident. In the note, he detailed everything: his plan, the specific bend in the pathway without a guardrail, and the reasons he had decided to end his life. It's been almost 8 years since I opened that note. I've only ever told a lawyer whom I contacted to ask whether I had to turn the note over to the authorities. He said no and gave me a detailed written explanation of why I wasn't obligated to. I also shared it with a counselor a couple of years later. The note, along with the lawyer's explanation, remains locked away in a box. I can't bring myself to get rid of it. To this day, his family still blames me for his death, but I can't bring myself to tell them the truth, knowing that their deeply held religious beliefs would make the reality unbearable for them. Story 2. About 6 years ago, I was surely assaulted by 3 men while walking to my car after university. I'm a guy, and the attack was brutal. It completely shattered me. Out of shame, I ended my long-term relationship with my girlfriend. She was devastated, and I know it hurt her deeply because she didn't understand why I had pulled away. Eventually, I got back together with her and shared some of the details. To this day, she is the only person who knows the truth. I've been to counseling since the incident, but even there, I can't bring myself to fully open up about what happened. The trauma has had a lasting impact on me. I haven't been able to have AOL since that night. My girlfriend, who will soon become my fiancée, is the most understanding and supportive person I've ever known. She never pressures me, and over the years, we've worked hard to rebuild even a small level of intimacy. Despite this, I feel it's unfair to commit to a lifelong relationship when I can't yet guarantee I can meet her needs. Before we get engaged, I want to ensure I can overcome this hurdle. Therapy has been my lifeline, though I still struggle to open up completely. One of the hardest things for me is knowing that I never went to the police. Those men are still out there, and I live with the guilt and anger of that decision every day. Story 3. When I was 13, I was walking home from school along a remote path near a forest. A man approached me and started talking. Feeling uneasy, I began walking faster and tried to politely tell him to leave me alone, but he wouldn't stop. Then he pulled out a knife and told me to go with him. Panicked, I tried to run, but he chased me down. We ended up wrestling on the ground as he tried to stab me. During the struggle, I managed to grab his hand, the one holding the knife, twist it, and stab him in the stomach. Blood poured onto my shirt as he screamed, and I ran away as fast as I could. 2 days later, I saw an article in the local newspaper. It said the police had caught a local rapist after he was admitted to the hospital with a stab wound. I knew it was him, but I've never told anyone about what happened that day. Story 4. My younger sister is severely mentally handicapped. She only learned to walk when she was 10 years old, and even then, she can only manage a few stumbling steps at a time. Her communication abilities are equivalent to that of an infant. She screams when she wants something or is even slightly bothered. But unlike an infant, she has the lung capacity of a grown woman. Her screams are terrifying, not like anything you'd expect from someone who has learned to scream. Caring for her is a constant, 24/7 responsibility. My mom hardly ever gets any sleep because most nights are spent trying to calm my sister. It's not just the screaming. My sister is physically strong, and she hits and digs her nails into your arms until she draws blood. There's no rewarding side to taking care of her. She doesn't show affection, and I've often wondered if she even knows who any of us are. We have caregivers sent by agencies to help while my parents are at work, but they're almost always terrible. The only exceptions were two nursing students who had to stop when they graduated. The others have been awful, stealing from us, bringing sketchy boyfriends into our home, and ignoring my sister while using our TV, phone, or computer. My parents don't bother complaining anymore because replacements are just as bad, if not worse. They've settled for saying, at least this one isn't violent. My parents aren't happy. We've barely done anything as a family since my sister was born. My mom has developed an anxiety disorder, and I only realized how depressed and anxious I was when I moved out for college. The thought of what happens if my parents can no longer care for her terrifies me. The idea of being responsible for her makes me feel like I can't breathe. Most group homes won't take her because she's too difficult to manage. And after seeing how caregivers from agencies behave, the idea of leaving her in a state-run institution is horrifying. But my deepest, darkest secret is this. I've thought that life might be better for my family, and even for her, if she could be humanely, painlessly put to rest. It seems like her life is full of pain and devoid of joy. Story 5. I almost didn't share this, and maybe I shouldn't have, but here it is. I'm not the brightest person, and I spent the first 26 years of my life mostly alone. I had very few friends, worked jobs that kept me constantly on the move, and lived a solitary existence. At one point, I lived on a ranch about 40 miles from the nearest city, with the closest neighbor 3 miles away. The nearest place to buy alcohol was a strip mall about 15 miles from my house, so I went there frequently. One night, as I was leaving, I heard unmistakable sounds of someone having I glanced over and saw what looked like a man assaulting an unconscious woman. For a moment, I froze. My first thought was, "Don't get involved." But then I shouted at him. He immediately bolted, running away as fast as he could. I went over to the woman, and as I was pulling her underwear back up, she regained consciousness. Disoriented, she asked where she was. Then she panicked. She started clawing at me, kicking and screaming, clearly believing I was the one who had assaulted her. She ran off, and I stood there, too terrified to follow her. The thought of going to the police crossed my mind, but I was afraid. I imagined myself walking into the station, covered in fresh scratches, and being accused of a crime I didn't commit. But I should have done something. I've known that for the past 4 years. I should have followed her to make sure she was safe. I should have gone to the police even the next day to report what I saw. But I didn't, and I've lived with that regret every day since. Story 6. This is a secret I plan to hold on to for a long time. My father was one of 13 children that we know of. Since we didn't have much money and his family lived several states away, we rarely visited them. My grandfather on my dad's side always took a special liking to me, though. When I was 5, he started writing a book about his life, intending to give it to me when he paid away. 16 years later, my grandfather became confused in a grocery store parking lot and accidentally locked himself in a car under the hot sun for hours. He never recovered and paid away 2 weeks later. After the funeral, my father and I remembered the book. We found it on the top shelf of the guest room closet. Since it was written for me, I was allowed to take it home and read it. My father asked to read it once I was finished, and I agreed. But after reading the book, I knew I couldn't let him see it. My grandfather had revealed that he wasn't my father's biological dad. Based on the timeline, it was clear he couldn't have been, but he accepted my father as his own and loved him as his favorite. It explained why he always treated me so kindly. I wasn't truly his grandchild, but he wanted me to know the truth after he was gone. I made excuses as to why my father couldn't read the book, and eventually he forgot about it. He still doesn't know, and I have no intention of ever telling him. I've never told anyone this before. Story 7. I'm a self-made multimillionaire, but no one in my family knows, not my parents, siblings, or extended relatives. They're aware that I'm doing well because I own a few nice things, travel often, and don't seem financially stressed. But I live modestly, and I'm careful about hiding my more extravagant splurges. A few close friends and business contacts know the truth, but I prefer to keep it under wraps. It's great because there's no pressure or high expectations placed on me. I enjoy helping my family financially when needed, but I do it in subtle ways, just enough to help them without giving a free ride. I started with very little and worked hard to get to where I am, so I value what I've earned. One reason I don't tell my family is our cultural background. In our community, wealthy individuals are often scrutinized. If someone donates a generous amount to a cause but doesn't give an extravagant amount, they face criticism and negativity. I've seen my own family engage in this kind of judgment, and I don't want that attention. Instead, I donate anonymously, which feels just as rewarding. Not being able to share my success with my family does bother me sometimes because I love them. If a major emergency ever arose, I'd step in and reveal the truth. But so far, I've been able to keep it to myself. Story 8. For the past 4 months, my life has been a monotonous cycle of going to work, coming home, smoking weed, and either procrastinating on Reddit or playing simple web games. My computer is too outdated to run anything else, and even YouTube is a struggle. I've had no meaningful social interaction aside from what's necessary to succeed at my 8 to 5 job. I've completely lost touch with all of my friends. I eat just one meal a day, lunch at work, so I don't seem too unusual to others. There have been days when I've survived on nothing but cigarettes, weed, and water. My sleep is erratic. Sometimes I get as little as 2 hours and still function, while other times I sleep an entire day and couldn't care less about what I missed. The worst part is that I'm fully aware this is likely due to a chemical imbalance in my brain causing depression. I have the mental strength to make positive plans to change my life, but I lack the physical will to follow through. Story 9. I've never told anyone this before, but I need to get it off my chest before it drives me insane. In my late teens and early 20s, I had EOS with numerous anonymous women I met through Craigslist. I was 25 when I stopped, but at the time, I did it out of boredom, loneliness, and depression. I'm considered a good-looking guy, so availability wasn't the issue. It was just a dark, messed up time in my life. The worst encounter I can remember was when I was 19 and met a 46-year-old married woman. She told me she'd had a hysterectomy and fantasized about having unprotected S with a young college guy. I like the idea of being someone's fantasy. After a few days of talking, I agreed to meet her at her place, even though I was nervous about her being married. She ordered me her husband knew and didn't care. Against my better judgment, I went. Her house was a rundown trailer about 20 minutes outside the city, surrounded by old cars, grimy holiday decorations, and a pole with leashes tied around it. I almost turned back but decided to see it through. She answered the door in thin black see-through lingerie. She was older and heavier than her photos, and when I asked about her limp, she said she had severe MS. I wanted to leave, but morbid curiosity kept me there. As soon as I stepped inside, she got on her knees and began performing oral S. It was intense and overwhelming. She then kissed me, and I felt nauseated. I quickly threw her onto the couch, has with her, and left immediately afterward. About a quarter of a mile down the road, I pulled over and vomited. It's been 6 years since that night, but I can't forget it. The memory still haunts me. Storytime. 2 years ago, I was in a really dark place. Living with an alcoholic father finally took its toll on me. He wasn't abusive, but he drank 2 six-packs a day, spending a large part of the family income on alcohol. At the same time, he would yell at us for spending too much money. He even cut off the phone lines and cable just so he could have more money for beer. Every day on my way home from school, I would fantasize about driving into oncoming traffic and ending it all. At first, I believed it was not only the best solution, but the only solution. After struggling with these thoughts for a while, I asked myself a simple but life-changing question. Why not go see someone about this? I had nothing to lose. Gathering the courage to tell my parents that I needed help was hard, but when I finally did, they took me to see a psychologist and psychiatrist. That decision changed my life. I started seeing my psychologist every Thursday after school. We talked about my dad, and he helped me develop different ways of perceiving the world. He also taught me techniques to stay optimistic. Over time, I realized that while I couldn't control what my dad did or why, I could control my future. I could learn from his mistakes and make sure I didn't repeat them in my own life. Now I'm happier than ever. I have more confidence, and I've learned that talking to someone about your problems can make all the difference. Whether it's a counselor, a close friend, or even a stranger online, sharing your burden is a step in the right direction. Story 11. My social anxiety is so severe that I've gone to extreme lengths to avoid being seen. I regularly pee in bottles to avoid being spotted on the way to the bathroom. I eat prepackaged junk food instead of cooking the meals I crave because I'm too terrified to go into the kitchen. I use pocket mirrors to check around corners and wear sunglasses to hide more of my face. I have countless quirks and strategies like these. I've been to doctors, but they don't seem to take me seriously. Once I went to an emergency appointment in tears because I couldn't stop crying and begged for medication. The doctor brushed me off, telling me to come back next time. Every time I tell a doctor, I feel like I have to switch to another one because I'm convinced they'll laugh at me. Even though I try to pretend everything is fine, it's not. Story 12. I'm a 29-year-old man and still a virgin. I've never kissed or even held a girl's hand. My friends think I'm shy, and I am, but the real issue is deeper. I've never been able to grasp the basics of social interaction. Over the years, I've realized I can't reliably interpret people's social intentions. When someone tries to make conversation with an irrelevant opening line, I can't follow along and stop responding because I struggle with conversations that don't follow a logical pattern. Oddly, I do fine with text-based interactions, like those online, where visual and emotional cues aren't involved. I've also realized I've misinterpreted movies for years because I couldn't understand the emotional motivations of the characters. This problem has made forming relationships with women almost impossible. I'm the stereotypical nerd, minus the glaze and weight. I was even diagnosed as a gifted child, and I suspect I may have Asperger's or something similar. I dropped out of university, despite being capable of succeeding, and I've never held a real job. I only help my parents with their food service business. What pains me the most, though, is the lack of love in my life. For years, this made me think about disappearing from the world entirely. But recently, I've made progress. I feel better about myself and believe I could handle a relationship now. I'm no longer the insecure person who felt sorry for himself. I'm not as shy as I used to be, but I'm still quite a social. I haven't found a girl yet, partly because I'm not actively looking. I still fear rejection, and partly because I focus on having fun with my male friends when I go out. I think I'll get there someday, but the time that's paid and the time I'll wait until then feels overwhelming. Story 13. When I was 30, my cat became suddenly and mysteriously ill. She stopped eating and cried out in pain whenever I tried to pick her up. Panicked, I took her to the emergency room at the animal hospital. They ran tests and x-rays but couldn't find anything wrong, so they sent her home with me. The next day, her condition worsened. I rushed her back to the animal hospital where they recommended keeping her overnight. It was a steep cost, $1,500, but she was only a year and a half old and I couldn't stand to see her suffer. At the time, I was living paycheck to paycheck, had just gone through a series of financial crises, and was terrible with money. I'd already borrowed from almost everyone I could think of except one friend. Desperate, I asked him for the money, and he lent it to me. I promised to pay him back within the month. Determined to keep my word, I turned to Craigslist and answered ads for men seeking erotic services. I prostituted myself to 5 different men, charging $300 each. To my surprise, all of them were kind, respectful, and lonely individuals who just wanted companionship and physical release. By the end of the month, I paid my friend back in full. Miraculously, the overnight stay at the hospital cured my cat, though neither I nor the vets ever discovered what was wrong with her. Today, she's 5 years old, healthy, and happy. I've never told anyone how I managed to save her, but I don't regret it. She's worth everything I did to protect her. Story 14. I am an illegal immigrant. I've spent years perfecting my English, learning to write flawlessly and erasing any trace of an accent. This helps me get by. I can talk my way out of tickets or navigate customer service issues, but it doesn't change my reality. Aside from my family and 2 best friends, no one knows my status. I see no realistic path to legalization anytime soon. The lack of a social security number severely limits my life in ways most people take for granted. I can't get an ID card, so I have a limited social life. No bars, clubs, or even the ability to buy an R-rated video game or watch an R-rated movie in theaters. Banks no longer accept the Mexican matricula, so I can't open a bank account or get a credit card. I can't rent an apartment because background checks require a social security number. My skills could get me a decent job, but my status keeps me stuck in under-the-table work. I even had to give up an $80,000 scholarship because it was only available to citizens or permanent residents. I love this country and can't imagine leaving, but the constant obstacles and the weight of my situation wear me down. I've entertained the thought of ending my life, even fantasizing about doing it in front of the INS just to make a statement. Marriage could be a way out, But I believe in marriage as something sacred and refuse to use someone for my benefit. With anti-immigration laws becoming stricter, I feel increasingly hopeless. I won't go back to Mexico. I'd rather die than return. And more often than not, I feel like dying is my only way out. No one knows about my suicidal thoughts. Not my family, not my friends. I carry this burden alone. Story 15. I come from what looks like a completely normal family. Both my mom and dad work regular 9-to-5 jobs. They're university educated, and we live in a typical white suburban neighborhood. My brothers and I are also in university. But my biggest secret, something I've never told anyone, not even my closest friends or girlfriend, is that my father grows and sells significant amounts of marijuana. On any given week, he moves between 4 and 30 pounds, sometimes even more. He also owns a separate house entirely dedicated to a large grow operation. It wasn't always this way. After my mom lost her job as an engineer, she struggled for a long time to find new work, and my dad didn't make much money. We were broke, all 5 of us living in a cramped 2-bedroom apartment, barely getting by. Then everything changed. My dad's operation allowed us to move into an upper-middle-class home. Today, my parents have almost no debt because everything is paid for in cash. They've saved enough money to retire comfortably and even travel frequently. Typing this out feels strange because I've never shared this with anyone, but it's the reality I live with, and I've always been careful to keep it hidden. Story 16. One of my closest friends once wanted to date me. I initially thought it might work, but his clingy and insecure behavior made me realize that neither of us would ever be happy in a relationship. Instead of letting him down gently, I ended up rejecting him in a harsh and direct way. Not long after, he showed up at my house. I got scared and refused to open the door. Later that night, he attempted suicide and ended up breaking his back. To this day, I don't know if he also intended to harm me when he came to my house. I never spoke to him again after that night, not even to apologize or express my regret. While some people know the vague details of what happened, no one knows the cruel contents of the email I sent him or how deeply I regret my actions. My fear that he might have also planned to harm me is something I've never discussed with anyone. It's too painful, and I don't think anyone would know how to respond. What could they even say? Sorry you almost killed your friend by being a bitch? For the past year, I've tried to drown out the guilt by drinking and hooking up with random people. But none of it helps. I can't deal with the person I've become or the fact that I might have ruined everyone's lives that night. Story 17. I'm not using a throwaway because I feel like I need to get this out. My darkest secret is that, while I appear fine on the outside, I'm soul-crushingly lonely on the inside. I like to imagine a future where I wake up next to an amazing girlfriend, fiancé, or wife, but that dream feels so distant it might as well be a fairy tale. I don't hide my loneliness to seem tough or maintain some idealized image of masculinity. I hide it because I don't want my friends to think I'm available and start trying to hook me up with people. I'm not attracted to any of them, but if I told them that, they'd take it personally. I'm secretly jealous of guys who seem to have it all. They're in great shape, they attract lots of women, and yet they still manage to screw up their lives. Meanwhile, it feels like the stars have to align just for me to get a single date. As a side note, I'm not unattractive. I'm just socially awkward. Unfortunately, most women don't find socially awkward guys appealing unless they're socially awkward themselves. And the ones who tend to either have severe mental health issues or are completely unattractive to me. It's a vicious cycle, and I can't help but feel stuck. Story 18. When I was in 4th grade, my sisters told me that colleges and universities would look at all of my grades and school records from every grade. I took this very seriously, believing that if I ever wanted to amount to anything, I had to make up for my low grades in elementary school. From that point on, I dedicated myself entirely to my studies. In 4th grade, I spent over 4 hours per CLA studying every night. I stopped doing anything exciting or fun at school or home because I feared that if something went wrong, colleges would find out. I even cut off all my friendships, seeing them as distractions or potential bad influences. Every night, through the tears and exhaustion, I would tell myself it was all worth it, because someday, Harvard would reach out and ask me to be a student. I didn't realize how college admissions actually worked until my senior year. From 4th to 9th grade, I averaged 4 to 5 hours of sleep per night. After that, it dropped to just 3 hours. Some weeks, I only slept once. Since 6th grade, I can count only 5 days when I didn't have homework. On those rare days, I went home and slept, and those were by far the best days of my life. Last year, things fell apart. I became consumed by thoughts of death, not suicidal thoughts, but a constant desire for everything to just stop. My grades slipped, and I ruined my perfect 4.0 GPA. Things spiraled from there. I nearly didn't graduate, paying a required CLA by only 2%. Despite this, I somehow still managed to graduate in the top 5% of my clay. But my life hasn't improved. I recently graduated high school and enrolled in college late, picking a random university because I had no idea what I was doing. I'm the first in my family to go to college, and my parents refused to help me. In the end, I feel like I failed. All the hard work I put in feels wasted. I didn't get into a good college because of procrastination and burnout. I've never made a friend. I hate my life. Over the past 4 years, I've spent less than an hour outside my house by my own decision. I have no life experiences and am socially awkward beyond belief. I worked so hard for so long, and I don't know where it's gotten me. Story 19. 2 years ago, I moved into a new apartment closer to my college. I lived with a couple of guys and shared a room with one of them, an overweight dude. I try not to stereotype, but this guy fit every cliche. Lazy, constantly gaming, mostly World of Warcraft, and always eating in front of his computer. One hand was always clutching Kentucky Fried Chicken while the other held his mouse. He sweated excessively, barely showered, and the stench was unbearable. I often gagged when he came into the room, and his snoring kept me up countless nights. But as bad as those things were, they weren't the worst part. I'm gay, but at the time I was still in the closet. Somehow, this guy figured out my secret. Maybe he saw my gay pee on my laptop, I don't know. Occasionally, he'd ask me questions like, "Do you think this guy on the cover of Men's Health has a great body?" Or, "Who's your favorite male actor or singer?" I stayed cautious and avoided giving him any clues, and I brushed it off since we didn't talk much anyway. During one semester break, all my housemates went home except for him and me. I was annoyed because I didn't like him and had been looking forward to having the house to myself. On the first night, I went to bed early, and so did he. Around 2 or 3 a.m., I felt a strange sensation on my boxers. Half asleep, I thought it was just the wind, so I ignored it. But it didn't stop. It felt like fingers. Fat fingers. I opened my eyes slightly and saw him crouched beside my bed, reaching into my boxers. I froze. I didn't know what to do. Should I wake up, shout, or pretend I was still asleep and turn away? In my shock and fear, I stupidly chose the last option. I turned sideways to cover myself, and he quickly jolted back to his bed, pretending to be asleep. The next day, he acted as if nothing had happened. A few days later, it happened again. This time, he was bolder. He extended his entire hand into my boxers, and when his fingertips touched my D, I snapped. I woke up abruptly, raised my fist, and punched him in the eye with all my strength before he even realized I was awake. I was filled with rage. I shoved him off and landed a few more punches to his kidney. When I finally calmed down, I stared him in the eyes and said coldly, "If you ever do that again, I'll cut your D off and shove it up your A." He whimpered, ran out of the room, and left the house. I didn't see him for days. When he eventually returned, he avoided me completely. I didn't confront him further because I was still in the closet, but I was furious. He lied to his friends about his black eye, claiming he'd fallen down the stairs. 2 weeks later, he moved out, and I was relieved. I never told anyone about what happened because I felt ashamed for letting him take advantage of me. But now, I know better. That will never happen again. Story 20. I want to be murdered. Let me explain why. I'm dying slowly and painfully. My body is falling apart. I'm losing massive amounts of weight and can barely eat because I choke on most foods. I have constant migraines, compressed discs in my back causing unbearable pain, dizziness that leaves me stumbling, probably from not eating enough or maybe blood sugar issues, and teeth that are a complete mess. I have at least 8 to 10 cavities that cause constant throbbing pain. Now, before anyone says, "Go to the doctor," here's the reality. I can't afford it. I make just enough money to disqualify me from welfare, but barely enough to cover my rent, a little food, most of which I throw away because I can't eat it, and internet to give me something to distract myself. I don't have anyone who could or would help me. My parents are mostly estranged, and my credit is ruined due to identity theft, so a loan is out of the question. I've been thinking about this for 2 to 3 years now. I've even planned it out. I'd hire a hitman, pay them the little money I have left, a few thousand in the bank that's supposed to cover my next month or two since I'm currently unemployed, and let them use my own gun to do it. Beforehand, I'd leave a voicemail on my phone explaining everything so that anyone who calls would know what happened. The thing is, I haven't been able to go through with it. Not because I don't want to, but because it's not exactly easy to find a hitman. You don't just search Craigslist for someone to kill you. And I don't know enough people to get connected to the kind of businesses that would offer that kind of service. So here I am, lying in bed most days, slowly wasting away and wishing I could just find someone to end it all for me. It's a horrible, shameful secret that I've kept from the few people I know, and it's eating me alive. But I don't know how to fix it. I don't know how to fix me. Story 21. My dad isn't the smartest man, but he's a skilled con artist. Over the years, he has stolen large sums of money from people, calling them investments. When he couldn't pay back the money, he would claim the investment hadn't been successful. One of his scams targeted someone connected to the mob. At first, the mobster treated my dad and us exceptionally well. We were even taken on an extravagant vacation to Tahiti, where we toured the islands, visited Black Pearl businesses, and had access to a private island to enjoy. But everything changed when my dad didn't return the mobster's money. We started receiving threatening phone calls. My mom was told chilling things like, "How would you like it if your children didn't come home from school one day?" Out of fear for our safety, my family was put into hiding. We stayed with relatives in another country, and my brother and I thought it was just an extended family visit. In reality, it was to protect us from harm. Eventually, my dad managed to get the mobster off his back, but the cost was high. My mom turned him over to the feds for fraud. Over the years, my dad has stolen over $70 million from a wide range of people. Mobsters, church members, friends, family, even me. Right before I was supposed to pay for my second year of college, he emptied my bank account. While he eventually paid me back, he did it through my mom, claiming it as child support. That money allowed me to continue my education, but the betrayal still stings. So, there you have it. My dad's a con man who has left a trail of devastation behind him, affecting not just strangers, but the people closest to him. Story 22. Growing up, I was straight edge. I didn't have an issue with drinking or drugs, they just weren't for me. Even after turning 21, I chose not to drink, although I did sell drugs in college for some extra money. In college, I met a girl my parents didn't approve of, and when I refused to break things off with her, they cut me out of their lives. We moved in together after college and eventually got married. We bought a house and a dog, building what I thought was a stable life together. But not long after moving into the house, our relationship started to shift. We became less and less intimate, and after a year and a half, she told me she didn't want to be married anymore. She asked me to find my own place. Most people know the general story of my divorce, but what they don't know is how deeply it's affected me. 6 months later, I still can't move on. Since the separation, I've been getting drunk nearly every night. My usual routine is to play a soccer game after work, then go home and drink until I can't feel anything. Drinking helps me numb the pain and makes the night pass quickly. It stops me from thinking about her and the life we lost. I don't spend all my time wallowing, though. I keep myself busy by playing soccer and going out with friends. But when I get home, it's the last place I want to be. So I drink over and over again, just to get through the nights. Story 23. Most of my friends think of me as a calm, paved guy, but that wasn't always the case. I've trained myself to be this way because of something I'm deeply ashamed of. Back in high school, when I used to ride the school bus, I was sitting next to a neighborhood girl. We weren't friends or enemies, just two people who happened to share a seat. She was chatting with her friends across the aisle when someone from the back of the bus threw a piece of paper, and it hit her on the back of the head. She immediately assumed it was me. Without hesitation, she turned and swung her elbow, breaking my nose in the process. I was in a daze for a moment, but then I saw red. I don't remember much after that, except that I wanted her away from me. I grabbed her by the arms, lifted her, and carried her to the front of the bus. She had finger-mark bruises on her arms for weeks afterward. When I set her down, she must have been terrified, but she started nervously laughing. I didn't understand at the time that it was her way of coping. In my anger, I stood over her, screaming and asking if the blood pouring from my nose was funny. And then I did something I still regret to this day. I intentionally leaned over her so my blood would drip onto her. Even though I would never physically hit someone half my size, I felt a sick sense of satisfaction knowing I'd ruined her day. There was no risk of blood-borne diseases at the time, but the memory still disgusts me. That moment of rage shaped who I am today. Now I always turn the other cheek, not because I'm naturally pive, but because I'm terrified of what I might do if I lose control again. Story 24. My wife and I have a secret. We're hardcore swingers. Most weekends, we meet up with couples or groups and have wild pee-styles at different locations. We've been doing this for 7 years and we're incredibly happy and deeply in love. In our regular lives, no one would ever suspect what we get up to. We come across as straight-laced and conservative. Recently, while I was away with some guy friends, they couldn't understand why I wasn't ogling random women when my wife wasn't around. We've fulfilled nearly every Sewell fantasy and combination imaginable, except for million gay encounters since I'm completely straight. We've been with people of almost every race, accent, and personality type. Sometimes, just for the fun of it, we'll meet couples outside our usual preferences or tied to current events, like a Japanese couple after the tsunami, just for the experience. We're both attractive and high profile, with appearances in TV and media. Because of this, we're invited to exclusive, private orgy parties for wealthy and famous people. These aren't the stereotypical, cringe-worthy public swinger clubs. These are secret, high-clay events that would blow most people's minds if they knew they existed. Despite all of this, I'm not as happy as you might think. Humans can't feel amazing all the time, no matter what they're doing. Lately, I've found myself wanting more meaningful, deep conversations with the women we meet instead of just S. At a recent orgy with gorgeous women, I ended up covering one with a blanket mid-session because I was worried she was cold. We know that in today's world, secrets don't stay hidden forever. We're prepared for the day our lifestyle comes out, which will likely shatter our personal and family lives. Ironically, it might even boost our careers. Until that day comes, we'll continue to keep this part of our lives as private as we can. Story 25. I have gynecomastia, which means I have male breast tissue. In my case, I only have it on one side, making it even more noticeable and asymmetrical. I wear extra-large shirts to try to hide it, but people still notice sometimes. When it's windy, I have to hold my shirt so the outline doesn't show. Most people owe me I wear oversized clothes because I'm overweight, but the truth is, I have a pretty decent body. However, I'm extremely pale because I avoid situations where I'd have to take my shirt off, like swimming, even though I'm a great swimmer and love it. Gynecomastia affects a large percentage of teenage boys, but for most, it goes away by their late teens or early 20s. Mine didn't, and it won't without surgery. The procedure is relatively affordable, but here's why I haven't had it done yet. I live in the US, where insurance rarely covers cosmetic procedures, and mine doesn't. The surgery is outpatient with minimal risk of complications, but without insurance, it costs thousands of dollars. I've had the money a few times, but the recovery process means not being able to use one arm for heavy lifting for about 3 months. Since I work in trades, framing, excavating, finish carpentry, woodworking, and pattern making, I can't afford to take that time off without jeopardizing my income. Retail jobs don't call me back because my experience is entirely in physical labor. By the time the busy work season ends and I have time to recover, I usually don't have the money anymore because I need to survive the winter. Going to school for 2 years also set me back financially. It didn't help my career and only drained my savings. Living with this has been a daily struggle. It affects my confidence, my social life, and my mental health. I desperately want to fix it, but the timing and money just never seem to align. Story 26. I think my biggest secret is so safe, even I've forgotten it. The runner-up would probably be the times I've looked at people and imagined how they might taste. For example, there was this one girl I saw, I think she was a runner, and I imagined taking a knife, filleting her leg and grilling it. I know plenty of people have imagined murder in their heads, but I've also thought about what parts I could eat, how I'd prepare them, and what it might taste like. The strange thing is I'm not even a cook. The most I can make is pasta and soup. It's not a big deal to me because I've never acted on the thought, but it's definitely something I've never talked about openly. The one time I did mention it to a close friend, they thought I was joking. Still, it unnerves me a little when I think about it. Another secret is that, although I find women very attractive, part of me finds the idea of S repulsive. I can't imagine putting the involved parts together and finding pleasure in it. When people talk about their S lives or body parts, it disgusts me. Advertisements that use S to sell products make me not want to buy them. I don't want to see it, hear it, or think about it. The funny part? Other times, I'm totally comfortable with S. I've looked at pornography, gotten off, and enjoyed it. I can look at a woman and think she's sigh and attractive. I can joke about S without issue. But there are times when I feel like a complete prude, and it's confusing. Then there's my glaze fetish. It's minor in comparison, but only a few close friends know about it. Story 27. I doubt anyone will see this, but I have an addiction. It's not drugs, though some people compare it to heroin. It's a pee and masturbation addiction. I can't stop looking at it. Whenever a girl walks by wearing revealing clothing, I can't stop staring, and it's so obvious that I'm doing it. This addiction is ruining my life because I waste all my time watching pee. It makes me forgetful, so I can't be responsible. I'll completely forget what I'm supposed to do. I ignore important things, like studying for exams, just to indulge in it. It's not just the time it wastes, it's how I feel about myself. I feel disgusting, like no girl would ever want to be with me if they knew. A few months ago, I met a girl who didn't seem to mind. She tried her best to help me and support me, and I truly loved her for it. But she left me 7 months ago. She said her feelings for me had changed, that she didn't feel the same way she did when we first met. I'm sure part of the reason was this addiction. Now I can't stop thinking about her or move on. Every time I look at P, I remember how supportive she was and end up feeling depressed. Some days I feel okay, but other days I feel like absolute crap. I'm not suicidal, not even close, but I want to stop this addiction so I can regain some self-confidence and meet new people. I just don't know how to stop. Story 28. I've always loved being tickled, but my mom turned it into a nightmare. She was a sadist who didn't understand the word stop. She would tickle me until I was in complete agony, unable to think or breathe. If I begged her to stop, she would tease me, saying things like, "You don't want me to tickle you? Okay, I'll tickle you more." This turned into a cycle of fear where I became too terrified to even say the word tickle. As a child, even hearing the word tickling would cause me to dissociate completely. It wasn't until I was a teenager that I learned what PTSD was, and I realized this was what I was experiencing. I went to several therapists, one of whom I liked, but I was still too scared to bring up the word tickle and couldn't tell them what had happened. Now, I don't know which came first, my tickling kink or my PTSD. When I wasn't being abused with it, tickling was something I genuinely loved. It's what gets me off, and the very few times I've done it with friends, it's been amazing. But I'm terrified of how easily it could trigger something painful if my partner said or did the wrong thing, even with good intentions. I hate that something I love so much could turn into something evil because of a single misstep. I often think about finding a therapist to help me sort through this, but it's a delicate problem. I've had no luck finding kink-aware professionals. Most Freudian therapists are an immediate no, and even others seem to bring their own hurtful biases, like the last one I saw 2 years ago, who ignored my PTSD and insisted my kink was a pathological issue I needed to fix. Story 29. I've been diagnosed as a clinical sociopath by several psychologists, one of whom even tried to have me institutionalized. He claimed I posed a definite threat to the welfare of himself and others due to my lack of empathy. While undergoing evaluations for my mental health, I discovered I qualified for Mensa and took the test. I've never contributed to the organization and don't plan to. Love and fear are emotions I can't fully relate to. Nobody knows this because I've always emulated successful people's behavior, using their decisions as a guide. On the outside, I seem like a loving husband, father, and co-founder of a finance firm. My family and friends are part of the facade that helps me appear normal, which is vital for my work. Most people view me as eccentric and slightly obnoxious. I live in Emerald Bay, Southern California. Over the years, I've embezzled a significant amount of money from my firm and made another man the scapegoat when suspicions arose. He was fired, and I haven't heard from him since. I regularly cheat on my wife and have a drug problem. Last year, I gambled away a Nissan 350Z, which led to constant arguments with my wife. I've been trying to maintain resilience, but I've hatched a plan to leave her and my family entirely. No one outside my therapist knows the truth. To everyone else, I'm just another successful man living a picture-perfect life. Story 30. I've been struggling with bulimia for the past 3 or 4 years. It comes and goes. Sometimes I don't purge for months, but other times it's relentless. When it was at its worst, I'd purge a couple of times a week, But in recent months, there have been periods where I've purged multiple times a night. I know exactly how this all started. My dad is a coach and began training me as soon as I could walk. He was very strict about food and had a rule that I couldn't leave the table until my plate was cleared. He always made sure I ate a lot to grow bigger, stronger, and faster. One time I had eaten a lot earlier in the day and couldn't eat any more by dinner time. My dad thought I was being picky, a trait he absolutely despises, and he got furious. He started force-feeding me, holding my nose shut until I opened my mouth and spooning the food in. I was already stuffed, so I ended up vomiting all over the table. I was very young, and the whole experience was traumatic. That was also the first and last time I ever ate couscous. My dad apologized afterward, explaining that he thought I was just being stubborn. I love my dad and don't blame him for my bulimia, but his strict rules about food and exercise definitely had an impact. Even now, I go through periods of excessive exercise that I know aren't healthy. It's a cycle that feels impossible to break, but I'm trying to understand and heal. Story 31. I hate my wife, but I can't leave her because of our son. Over the years, she has become incredibly annoying. She complains about the smallest things and gets angry over the slightest inconvenience. I feel like I have no voice or authority in our household. She works only part-time, but I suspect she doesn't even want to do that. It seems like she wants to quit entirely and be supported by me, even though our son is in daycare most of the day. She calls herself a stay-at-home mom, but it feels like she's using that as an excuse to do as little as possible. She never finished university and has just a few courses left to complete her degree. I've tried encouraging her to either finish her studies or pursue something new, but she always finds excuses not to. Physically, she's gained weight over the years. While I don't mind women with a bit of extra weight, her clothes don't seem to fit her anymore, and she doesn't make much effort to look presentable when she goes out. It's frustrating because it feels like she doesn't care. I had plans to return to school this fall while continuing to work, but she's against it. She doesn't want me to reduce my salary or spend less time at home, even if it's for something that could improve our future. Her parenting decisions also drive me crazy. She allows our son to eat candy every single day, which I think is unhealthy and irresponsible. She's also started buying him pink clothes because most of his friends are girls, and she thinks he should fit in. He's only 5. He's not making those kinds of decisions himself. Just last week, 3 people armed he was a girl. On top of everything else, she restricts my time on the computer, even though she knows I'm a computer geek and it's something I genuinely enjoy. I'm writing this on my work PC because I can't do it at home without her complaining. I feel trapped. I want to leave her, but I stay for the sake of our son. It feels like I'm sacrificing my happiness and my future to maintain a family that's barely holding together. Story 32. I've been bedwetting for nearly 30 years. It's something I've obviously tried to keep private. Over the years, I've seen countless doctors and counselors to address it, but the issue persisted. It's not the occasional, he got drunk and peed himself kind of thing. It's a chronic problem that has shaped much of my life. When I lived in a shared house, everyone eventually found out. That led to some strange and difficult experiences. Some people tried to blackmail me with it, while others consoled me, especially friends who knew about it from an early age. But I've also overheard my adult friends laughing about it behind my back. Those moments destroyed my trust in people and left me with deep paranoia. 6 months ago, something changed. I randomly met someone who sensed that something was wrong and encouraged me to talk about it. This person, who has become like a therapist to me, helped me realize that my bedwetting wasn't the main problem. It was a symptom of a deeper psychological issue. With their help, I began to unpack events from my childhood that might have contributed to this. I don't have a clear understanding of the exact root cause, but something shifted in my subconscious. Since then, I've been completely dry. I still feel nervous that the problem might return, but for now, I'm starting to feel what self-esteem and confidence are like. Things I've been missing for so long. For the first time, I feel like I might be able to have the life I've always wanted. One where I'm proud of myself, can trust others, and even find love. To anyone else struggling with this, try to talk to someone you trust who won't judge you. Open up about the hardest and most hidden parts of your childhood. It's not easy, but for me, it's been life-changing. Story 33. I've never fully shared this timeline before, so I'm a bit nervous putting it all together now. When my parents divorced, I was 11. It completely changed me. My behavior did a 180 and I became withdrawn, rarely speaking more than 2 words at a time. By age 12, I had started cutting and scratching my legs and found myself sitting on my grandmother's bathroom floor one night with a knife in my hand, trying to make sense of why I felt the way I did. I felt like a burden on my family, being the youngest, the accident child. My older siblings had gone far away for college and rarely visited. Friends and other family members kept their distance from my parents, who were often at odds with everyone. I felt completely alone. Between the ages of 13 and 16, I lived with my mom, who drank and partied excessively. She was constantly dating different men and was barely around. I'd see her maybe once a week, but she'd only stay long enough to check messages or shower. When she did come home, I remember crying loudly in bed, desperately hoping for some reaction from her, but it never worked. Our relationship was a mess. She eventually lost her job, remarried, and kicked me out, saying I was wasted space and costing her too much money. I wasn't even invited to her wedding. After that, I spiraled into alcohol and cocaine use until I decided to leave everything behind at 18 and move to a different state. Now at 21, I've worked hard to put myself through school and am about a year away from completing my bachelor's degree. I'm also in a healthy, long-term relationship with my best friend. I've spent a lot of time questioning everything I was taught growing up, and I'm confident in who I am now. That said, I'm still incredibly negative, sarcastic, and struggle to warm up to people or trust them. I can put my best foot forward, but when people in my life become negligent or distant, I find it hard to forgive. College has been ridiculously hard for me since day one, but I'm proud that I'm still here, pushing through it all. Story 34. I'm not using a throwaway account because I'm lazy. Here's how I met my current boyfriend. At the time, I was in a long-distance relationship. My boyfriend and I had agreed to open things up to help with the soul frustration of living in different states. So I decided to post on Craigslist, looking for some casual fun. Initially, I tried writing one of those standard, curvy young lady looking for fun posts, but it sounded fake and cringeworthy. So instead, I deleted it and wrote a rambling, unedited post about how Batman was cool and how I liked S. Honestly, I don't even remember much about what I wrote except the Batman part. Of course, I still got flooded with unsolicited penis pictures. But one guy stood out. He actually wanted to get to know me first. We started chatting and eventually we met up for what turned out to be supremely awkward but surprisingly enjoyable. We kept hanging out after that, but I was still focused on returning to my long-distance boyfriend. Fast forward about a year, my long-distance relationship fell apart. He was acting like a total jerk, and things were strained anyway, so we broke up. In the meantime, I kept seeing the Craigslist guy. Over time, I realized I'd never met another person who I clicked with so well in every aspect of my life. Eventually, we decided to make it official, and I haven't regretted it for a second. It's funny how it all happened. He'd been having a crappy night and was browsing Craigslist on a whim while drunk. He could have easily gone to bed or been doing something else, and I almost deleted my post entirely. Only 3 other people in the world know how we really met. To everyone else, we just say we met at a party. Story 35. I was the stereotypical goody two-shoes geek in high school. Honor Society vice president, band section leader, lead in school musicals, straight A student taking all the AP classes. I was the last person anyone would expect to pull a stunt like this. In my junior year, an upper clammon in my band section paid down a key that supposedly unlocked the wrestling room. It was an out-of-the-way, unused room with no windows, perfect for skipping Clea unnoticed. One day I convinced a few friends to ditch Key LA with me, and we played euchre in the wrestling room. It felt rebellious and fun, especially for someone like me, who was always the teacher's pet. Curious about what else the key might unlock, I started testing it on doors around the school. I discovered that it also opened a government social studies classroom. At the time, it wasn't particularly useful since I didn't have any class there, but I filed that information away. Fast forward to the final semester of my senior year. I was neck and neck with my best friend for valedictorian, and we were both taking U.S. government in that classroom. As finals approached, I started feeling lazy and decided to use the key to snoop around the teacher's room after school to look for clues about the exam. After waiting until the hallways were empty, I unlocked the door and slipped inside, making sure to lock it behind me. I rummaged through the teacher's desk and found a folder labeled with my graduation year and final exam. Jackpot. Inside were the 100-question exam and the Scantron answer key. Just as I was looking over the folder behind a large cabinet to avoid being seen through the windows, I heard the jingle of keys. My heart dropped. The door opened and the teacher walked in, turning on the lights. I froze, holding the folder, terrified that my high school career was about to go up in flames. He stayed for what felt like forever, packing up a gym bag and organizing his things. Finally, he turned off the lights and left, locking the door behind him. Once I was sure the coast was clear, I made my move. I ran to the library, copied the answer key, returned the folder to its exact spot, and quietly left the building. To cover my tracks, I grabbed a few blank Scantron sheets from the teacher's office. I shared my plan with two friends who were struggling in the earlier government CLA. I lightly marked the correct answers on their Scantron sheets, ensuring they'd score well but not perfectly. They swapped their marked Scantrons during the test and confirmed the questions matched. On the day of my exam, I used a Scantron I had filled out with a 98% score, ensuring an A+ in the CLA. I became valedictorian, while my best friend, who wasn't involved in the scam, became salutatorian. Looking back, I regret the whole thing. It was a selfish and unnecessary risk. I could have been suspended, lost my honors, and destroyed my reputation. I betrayed my values, my best friend, and everyone who believed in me. It's a story I can't share with anyone in real life, and I still feel ashamed of how I acted. It wasn't worth it, and I'd give anything to go back and do things the right way. Story 36. I've had comforting daydreams of dying ever since my father passed away from cancer when I was 10 or 11. His death was slow and painful, and in the years afterward, I focused so hard on not thinking about him that I ended up forgetting almost everything about my life before age 10. When I was around 15, I realized that I had very few memories from my childhood. I didn't want to think about my dad, and in doing so, I inadvertently erased much of my past. Now at 21, I've noticed that the forgetting hasn't stopped. I struggle to remember anything before the age of 17. Bits and pieces come back when my family talks about old times. But I'm not sure if those memories are real or if my mind is just filling in the gaps. My memory is terrible in every way. I'm also very nervous around people. I was bullied for 10 years as a kid, and I've never understood why. I wasn't ugly, stupid, or anything that might typically make someone a target. I was just an average kid, but I was beaten up like it was a sport by kids up to 5 years older than me. I was excluded from almost every social activity with kids my age, and it left me doubting myself and my worth. Even now, although I think I'm good-looking, tall, 194 centimeters, strong and reasonably smart, there's always this voice in the back of my head telling me I'm not enough. I feel like no one truly likes me, that I'm always a third wheel, unfunny, stupid, and useless. Today I'm reasonably well-liked and have 2 friends, but they're more like drinking buddies than real friends. I don't do anything during the week except work, school, browse Reddit, and watch movies. On weekends, I get so drunk that I often end up in fights, ruin my clothes, or hook up with women I don't care about. Despite all this, I don't feel lonely anymore. I think I got over loneliness when I was around 14. But what I feel is worse than loneliness. It's a constant sense of melancholy. It's so strong that I often can't muster the energy to clean my room or take care of myself. My guitar has been sitting without strings for half a year, even though I live right next to a music shop. I've even stopped playing video games, something I used to love. I'll boot one up, play for 20 minutes, and then lose interest. Inside, I feel soggy, bored, and tired of being alive. It's not a black, hopeless despair. It's more like a dull, gray pointlessness. I don't want to kill myself, but if I could lie down and stop breathing, I'd be okay with that.